When he and Janice bought the place in 1984, you could still see from their balcony snatches of the Gulf, a dead-level edge to the world over the rooftops and broken between the raw new towers like the dots and dashes of Morse code. And in their excitement, they bought a telescope and tripod at a nautical shop at the mall a mile down Pindo Palm Boulevard. In its trembling little circle of vision that first winter, they would catch a sailboat with its striped spinnaker bellying out, or a luxury yacht with tall white sides peeling back the waves silently, or a fishing charter with its wing-like gaffing platforms, or, farthest out, a world unto itself, a rusty gray oil freighter headed motionlessly toward Mobile or New Orleans, or back toward Panama or Venezuela. In the years since, their view of the water had been built shut, skyscraper hotels arising along the shore, constructions the color of oatmeal or raspberry whip, or else sheer glass like vertical distillations, cold and pure, of the Gulf's blue-green. Where these towers arise had once been nothing but sand and mangrove swamp and snaky tidal inlets slipping among the nets of roots and dimpling where an alligator or a water moccasin glided. And then a scattering of white-painted houses and unpainted shacks in feeble imitation of the south to the north, scratching out some cotton and grazing some cattle on the sandy soil, sending north shuffling herds of beef on the hoof to the starving rebel troops in the Civil War. And then houses closer together, some of brick and wrought iron and of limestone and granite barged in from Alabama quarries. Then, with the new century, to this appendage of the South came the railroads and the rich and the sick and the hopeful misfits, this being frontier in an unexpected direction. Busts followed booms. Optimism kept washing in. Now, with the jets and Social Security and the national sun worship, they can't build onto it fast enough, this city called De Leon, named after some Spanish explorer killed for all his shining black breastplate by the poisoned arrow of a Seminole in 1521 near here, or a place like it, and pronounced Delian by the locals, as if they are offering to deal you in. The past glimmers like a dream at the back of Harry's mind as he awakes. In his semi-retirement he has taken to reading history. It has always vaguely interested him, that sinister mulch of facts our little lives grow out of before joining the mulch themselves, the fragile brown rotting layers of previous deaths, layers that, if deep enough and squeezed hard enough, make coal as in Pennsylvania. On quiet evenings, while Janice sits on the sofa sipping herself into stupidity with some lame-brained TV show, he lies on the bed leaning back against its padded satiny headboard with a book, staring dizzily down into the past as if high in a jade-green treehouse. The sound that breaks into his dreams and dispels them is the rasp of golf greens being mowed, and then the scarcely less mechanical weeping noise of the seagulls gathering on the freshly watered fairways where the earthworms are surfacing to drink. The head of their bed is by the big glass sliding doors, left open a crack to take in the winter morning cool, in these few months when the air conditioner is non-essential. So the cool salt air, sweetened with the scent of fresh fairways, reminds his face of where he is, this mass-produced paradise where Janice's money has taken him. She is not in the bed, though her warmth still greets his knee as he spread-eagles into her space. In deference to his height of 6'3", they have at last bought a king-size bed. So, for the first time in his life, his feet do not hang over the bottom and force him to sleep on his belly like a dead man floating. It took him a long time to get used to it, his feet not hooking onto the mattress this way, but instead being forced to bend at the ankle or else point sideways. He gets foot cramps. He tries to sleep on his side, slightly curled up. It gives his mouth space to breathe and his belly room to slop into, and it frightens his frail heart less than hanging face down over the thickness of the mattress. But his arms don't know where to go. A hand crooked under his head loses circulation at the wrist, and its numbness awakes him, tingling as if with an electric shock. If he lies on his back, Janice says, he snores. She snores herself now that they are approaching elderly, but he tries not to blame her for it. Poor mutt, she can't help what she does when asleep, snoring, and sometimes farting so bad he has to bury his nose in the pillow and remind himself she's only human. Poor women. They have a lot of leaks down there. Their bodies are too complicated. He hears her now in the kitchen, talking in an unreal, high-needling sort of voice, the way we talk to children. Rabbit listens for the lower, younger voice of the children's mother to chime in, but instead hears, close to his head, a bird cheeping in the Norfolk pine whose branches can be touched from their balcony. He still can't get over Norfolk pines, the way they look like the plastic trees you buy for Christmas, the branches spaced like slats, and each one of them a plume perfect as a bird's feather, and the whole tree absolutely conical in shape. The bird's cheeping sounds like a piece of moist wood being rhythmically made to squeak against another. Most nature in Florida has a manufactured quality. Wall-to-wall carpet, green outdoor carpeting on the cement walks, Bermuda grass in the space between the walks, all of it imposed on top of the sand, the dirty gray sand that sprays over your shoes when you take a divot down here. Today is Wednesday. He has a golf date, his usual foursome. Tee-off time at 9:40. The thought gives him a reason to get out of bed and not just lie there forever trying to remember his dream. In his dream he had been reaching out toward something his sleeping eyes didn't let him see through his lids, something round and shadowy and sad, big-bellied with the vague doom he tries to suppress during the daytime. Up, Rabbit examines the phony-looking branches of the Norfolk pine to see if he can see the noisy bird. He expects from the self-importance of the sound a cockatoo or toucan at least, a squawky tropical something with foot-long tail feathers hanging down, but all he sees is a small brown bird such as flicker all around in Pennsylvania. Maybe it is a Pennsylvania bird, a migrant down here just like him, a snowbird. He goes into the bathroom and brushes his teeth and urinates. Funny, it used to make a throaty splash in the toilet bowl. Now a kind of grudging, uncertain stream comes out. He has to rise once and sometimes even twice in the night, sitting on the toilet like a woman. What with the foreskin folded over sleepily, he can never be sure which direction it will come out in. Bad as a woman, they can't aim either. He shaves and weighs himself. He's gained a pound. Those Planters' peanut bars. He moves to leave the bedroom and realizes he can't. In Florida, he sleeps in his underwear. Pajamas get twisted around him, and around 2 in the morning feel so hot they wake him up, along with the pressure in his bladder. With Prue and the kids here, he can't just wander into the kitchen in his underwear. He hears them out there bumping into things. He either should put on his golf pants and a polo shirt or find his bathrobe. He decides on the bathrobe, a woolly maroon, as being more, what's that word that keeps coming up in medieval history? Seigneurial, hostly, grand paternal. It makes a statement, as Nelson would say. By the time Rabbit opens the door, the first fight of the day has begun in the kitchen. Precious little Judy is unhappy. Salt tears redden the rims of her lids, though she is trying, shaky-voiced, not to cry. But half the kids in my school have been. Some of them have even been twice, and they don't even have grandparents living in Florida. She can't reach Disney World. Janice is explaining. It's really a whole separate trip, sweetheart. You should fly to Orlando if you want to go. To go from here, it'd be like driving to Pittsburgh, Harry finishes for her. Daddy promised, the child protests, with such passion that her 4-year-old brother, holding a spoon suspended in his fist above a bowl of total he is mushing without eating, sobs in sympathy. 2 drops of milk fall from his slack lower lip. Dull driving, too, Harry continues. Stoplights all down Route 27. We come that way sometime driving down. Prue says, Daddy didn't mean this time. He meant some other time when we have more days. He said this time, the child insists. He's always breaking promises. Daddy's very busy earning money so you can have all the things you want, Prue tells her, taking the prim tone of one woman losing patience with another. She, too, was wearing a bathrobe, a little quilted shorty patterned with violet morning glories and their vines. Her freckled thighs have that broad, bland smoothness of car fenders. Her feet are long and bony, pink in their toe joints and papery white on top, in cork-soled lipstick red clogs. Her toenail polish is chipped, and Rabbit finds that sexy, too. Oh, yeah, the child replies with a furious, sarcastic emphasis Harry doesn't understand. Family life, life with children, is something out of his past that he has not been sorry to leave behind. It was for him like a bush in some neglected corner of the backyard that gets overgrown, a lilac bush or privet some bindweed has invaded from underneath, with leaves so similar and tendrils so tightly entwining, it gives the gardener a headache in the sun to try to separate bad growth from good. Anyway, he basically had but the one child, Nelson, one lousy child, though he was reading somewhere the other day that a human male produces enough sperm to populate not just the planet Earth, but Mars and Venus as well, if they could support life. It's a depressing thought, too planetary, like that unreachable round object in his dream, that the whole point of his earthly existence has been to produce little Nellie Angstrom. So he in turn could produce Judy and Roy, and so on until the sun burns out. Now Nelson is stirred up and sucked into the kitchen by the fuss. He must have heard himself being talked about, and comes in from the guest bedroom, bare-chested and unshaven in rumpled, smoky blue pajama bottoms that look expensive. Unease infiltrates Harry's abdomen with this observation of Nelson's expensive tastes, something he is trying to remember about numbers, something he can't reach. Janice said the boy looked exhausted, and he does look thin, with faint shadows flickering between his ribs. There is a touch of aggression about the bare chest, something territorial, taken with Prue's shorty robe. The pajama game. Doris Day and, who was it, John Raitt? Despite the quality of his pajamas, Nelson looks haggard and scruffy and mean, with the unshaven whiskers and that tufty little mustache like what dead Fred Springer used to wear, and his thinning hair standing up in damp spikes. Rabbit remembers how deeply Nelson used to sleep as a child, how hot and moist his skull on the pillow would feel. "What's this about promises?" the boy asks angrily, staring at a space between Judy and Prue. "I never promised to go up to Orlando this trip." "Daddy, there's nothing to do in this dumb part of Florida. I hated that circus museum last year, and then on the way back the traffic was so miserable Roy threw up in the Kentucky Fried Chicken parking lot." "Route 41 does a job on you," Harry admits. "There's tons to do," Nelson says. "Go swim in the pool. Go play shuffleboard." He runs dry almost immediately and looks in panic at his mother. Janice says to Judy, "The village has tennis courts where you and I can go and hit balls." "Roy'll have to come, and he always spoils it," the little girl complains, the vision of it freshening her tears again. "And there's the beach," Janice goes on. Judy replies, just making objections now. "Our teacher says the sun gives you skin damage, and the earlier you get it, the more cancer you'll get later on." "Don't be such a fucking smartass," Nelson says to her. "Your grandmother's trying to be nice." His remark makes the child's tears spill, out through the curved lashes onto her cheeks like the silvery jerking tracks rain makes on window panes. "I wasn't being," she tries to get out. At her age, this girl should be happier than she is, Harry thinks. "Sure you were," he tells her, "and why not? It's boring, going somewhere with family, away from your friends. We all remember what it's like. We used to drag your daddy to the Jersey Shore, and then make him go up to the Poconos and have hay fever up in those god-awful dark pines. Torture. The things we do to each other in the name of fun. Okay, here's my plan. Anybody want to hear my plan?" The little girl nods. The others, even Roy, who's been carefully shaping his total mush into a kind of pyramid with the back of his spoon, watch him as if he is a conjurer. It's not so hard to get back into the swing of family life. You just have to come out of yourself a little. It's like basketball was, those first 2 or 3 minutes, when amid the jamming and yelling and body heat and crowd noise, you realized that you were going to have to do it yourself. Nobody was going to do it for you. "Today I got to play golf," he begins. "Great," Nelson says. "That's a big help. You're not going to make Judy caddy if that's your plan. You'll bend her spine out of shape." "Nellie, you're getting paranoid," Harry tells him. The boy's been trying ever since that business with Jill 20 years ago to protect women against his father. His son is the only person in the world who sees him as dangerous. Harry feels the day's first twinge in the chest, a little playful burning like a child flirting with a lit match. "That wasn't my plan, no, but why not sometime? She could carry my lightweight bag. I'd take out 2 of the woods and 1 of the wedges, and she and I could walk a couple holes some late afternoon when the tea times are over. I could show her the swing. But in the foursome, actually, we ride carts. I'd rather we walked for the exercise, but the other bozos insist. Actually, they're great guys. They all have grandchildren. They'd love Judy. She could ride in my place." He can picture it, her sitting there like a slim little princess, Bernie Drexel with his cigar in his mouth at the wheel of the electric cart. He is losing his conjurer's audience, thinking out loud this way. Roy drops his spoon, and Prue squats down to pick it up, her shorty robe flaring out over one thigh. A lacy peep of jet-black bikini underpants. A slightly shiny vaccination oval high up. Nelson groans. "Out with it, Dad. I got to go to the bathroom." He blows his nose on a paper towel. Why is his nose always running? Harry has read somewhere, maybe People on the Death of Rock Hudson, that that's one of the first signs of AIDS. Harry says, "No more circus museum. Actually, they've closed it for renovations." He had noticed a story about it in the Sarasota paper a week or so ago, headlined Circus Redux. He hates that word. You see it everywhere, and he doesn't know how to pronounce it, like arbitrager and perestroika. My plan was this. Today I got to play golf, but tonight there's bingo in the dining hall, and I thought the kids, or at least Judy, would enjoy that, and we could all use a real meal for a change. Tomorrow we could either go to this Lionel Train and Seashell Museum that Joe Gold says is just terrific, or in the other direction, south, there's the Edison House. I've always been kind of curious about it, but it may be a little advanced for the kids, I don't know. Maybe the invention of the telephone and the phonograph doesn't seem too exciting to kids raised on all this computerized crap they have now. "Dad," Nelson says in his pained voice, sniffing, "it's not even that exciting to me. Isn't there some place out on Route 41 where they could go play video games, or miniature golf, or the beach and swimming pool? Jesus, I thought we came down here to relax, and you're making some kind of educational ordeal of it. Come on, lay off." Rabbit is hurt. "Lay off? I was just trying to create a little structure," he says. Prue intervenes in his defense. "Nelson, the children can't spend all day in the pool. They'll get too much ultraviolet." Janice says, "This hot weather is bound to turn cool this time of year. It's fluky." "It's the greenhouse effect," Nelson says, turning to go to the bathroom, showing that disgusting rat's tail at the back of his head, the glint of earring. How queer is the kid? "The greedy consumer society has wrecked the ozone, and we'll all be fried by the year 2000, Nelson says. "Look." He points to the Fort Myers News Press someone has laid on the kitchen table. The main headline is 1988, The Dry Look, and a cartoon shows a crazed-looking yellow sun wringing out some clouds for a single drop of water. Janice must have brought the paper in from the corridor, though all she cares about is the lifestyle section. Who's fucking who, who's divorcing who. Normally she stays in bed and lets her husband be the one to bring the paper in from the corridor. Lifestyles keeps. Prue hands back Roy's spoon to him and takes away his dreadful little bowl of total mush, congealed like dog food left out overnight. "Want a nana?" she asks in a cooing, coaxing, sexy voice. "A nice nana if Mommy peeled and sliced it?" Janice confesses, "Teresa, I'm not sure we have any bananas. In fact, I know we don't. Harry hates fruit, though he should eat it, and I meant to do a big shopping yesterday for you and Nelson, but the tennis game I was in went to the third set, and then it was time to go to the airport." She brightens. Her voice goes up in volume. She tries to become another conjurer. "That's what we can do this morning while Grandpa plays his golf. We can all go to Winn-Dixie and do an enormous shopping." "Count me out," Nelson yells from the bathroom. "I'd like to borrow the car sometime, though." What does he want a car for, the little big shot? Judy's tears have dried, and she has snuck into the living room where the Today Show is doing its last recap of the news and weather. Willard Scott, beamed in from Nome, Alaska, has Jane and Bryant in stitches. Prue is looking into the cupboards and begging Roy, "How about some sugar pops, honey? Grandpa and Grandma have lots of sugar pops, and jars of dry-roasted peanuts and cashews. Harry, do you know that nuts are loaded with cholesterol?" "Yeah, people keep telling me that, but then I read some article said the body needs cholesterol and the whole scare's been engineered by the chicken lobby." Janice, in a pink alligator shirt and a pair of magenta slacks like the women wear down here to go shopping in, has wedged herself in at the kitchen table with the news press and a sliced open bagel and plastic container of cream cheese. In her Florida phase, she has taken to bagels. Lox, too. She has pulled out the lifestyle section of the newspaper, and Harry, still able to read type in any direction from his days as a linotyper, sees sideways the headline, They use a down style and lots of USA Today style color graphics. Man watchers name the men with the most, and in caps at the top, huge loss, and working on another wedding. He cranks his head to look at the page the right way and sees that they mean working girl star Melanie Griffith and the survivors of the Armenian tragedy and their unique type of grief. Funny how your wife reading the newspaper makes every item in it look fascinating, and then when you look yourself it all turns dull. The brown Aeromaster percolator, with a little sludgy coffee lukewarm in its glass half, sits at the end of the counter, past where Prue is still standing, trying to find something Roy might eat. To let Harry ease his belly by, she goes up on her toes, and with a little soft grunt under her breath, presses her thighs tight against the counter edge. All this family closeness is almost like an African hut, where everybody sleeps and screws in full view of everybody else. But then Harry asks himself, what has Western man done with all his precious privacy anyway? To judge from the history books, nothing much except invent the gun and psychoanalysis. Down here it's necessary to keep bread and cookies in a drawer, holding a big tin box to keep out ants, even up on the 4th floor. It's awkward to pull the drawer out and then lift the lid, but he does, finding a couple of empty cookie bags, one for double-stuff Oreos and one for Fruit Newtons, which his grandchildren left with nothing but crumbs inside, and 1½ stale sugar doughnuts that even they disdained to consume. Rabbit takes them and his mug full of sludgy coffee and squeezes back past Prue, concentrating on the sensation in his groin as her shorty robe grazes it, and with a wicked impulse gives the kitchen table a nudge with the back of his thighs to get Janice's full cup of coffee rocking so it will slosh and spill. "Harry," she says, quickly lifting the newspaper. "Shit." The sound of the shower running leaks into the kitchen. "Why the hell's Nelson so jittery?" he asks the women aloud. Prue, who must know the answer, doesn't give it, and Janice says, mopping with a Scott towel Prue hands her, "He's under stress. It's a much more competitive car world than it was 10 years ago, and Nelson's doing it all himself. He doesn't have Charlie to hide behind like you did." He could have kept Charlie on, but he didn't want to. Charlie was willing to stay part-time, he says, but nobody answers him except Roy, who looks at him and says, "Grandpa looks ridiculous." "Quite a vocabulary," Harry compliments Prue. "He doesn't know what he's saying. He hears these expressions on television," she says, brushing back hair from her forehead with a touching two-handed gesture she has. The theme of the kitchen decor is aqua, a creamy, frigid color that looks a little subtler in the paint chart Janice and he consulted 4 years ago when they had the place repainted. He wondered at the time how it would wear, but Janice thought it would be light-hearted and slightly daring, like they're buying a condominium at all. Even the refrigerator and the Formica countertops are aqua, and looking at it all, with the creatures and flowers of seashells Janice has loaded the open shelves toward the foyer with, makes him feel panicky, shortens his breath. Being underwater is one of his nightmares. A simple off-white like the golds next door would have been less oppressive. He takes his mug and the doughnut and a half and the rest of the news press into the living room and settles on the sofa side of the round glass table, since Judy occupies the wicker armchair that faces the television set. The pictures on the front page are of Donald Trump, mail call the year's hottest, the grimacing sun ringing the clouds, rainfall 33% off average, year is driest since 1927, and Fort Myers Mayor Wilbur Smith, looking like a long-haired kid younger even than Nelson, quoted saying that football star Deion Sanders' recent arrest for assault and battery on a police officer could be partially blamed upon the unruly crowd that had gathered to watch the incident. There is a story about an annual government book-length report on automobiles and consumer complaints. In a gray box highlighting the best by the book, under all 4 categories, subcompacts, compacts, intermediate, and minivans, there isn't a Toyota listed. He feels a small pain slipping in his stomach. "Harry, you must eat a solid breakfast," Janice calls, "if you're going to play golf right through lunch. Dr. Morris told you coffee on an empty stomach is about the worst thing you can do for hypertension." "If there's anything makes me hypertense," he calls back, "it's women telling me all the time what to eat." As he bites into the stale doughnut, the sugar patters down on the paper and dusts the crimson lapels of his seigneurial bathrobe. Janice continues to Prue, "Have you been giving any thought to Nelson's diet? He doesn't look like he's eating anything." "He never did eat much," Prue says. "He must be where Roy gets his pickiness from." Judy has found among all the channels of network and cable an old Lassie movie. Harry moves to the end of the sofa to get an angle on it. The collie nudges awake the lost boy asleep in the haystack and leads him home, down a dirt road toward a purple Scottish sunset. The music swells like an ache in the throat. Harry smiles sheepishly at Judy through his tears. Her eyes, that did their crying earlier, are dry. Lassie is not part of her childhood past, lost forever. He tells her when the frog leaves his throat, "I gotta go play golf, Judy. Think you can manage here today with these rude folks?" She studies him seriously, not quite sure of the joke. "I guess so." "They're good people," he says, not sure this is true. "How would you like to go sun-fishing sometime?" "What's sun-fishing?" "It's sailing in a little boat. We go off one of the hotel beaches in Delian. They're supposed to be just for the guests, but I know the guy who runs the concession. I play golf with his father." Her eyes don't leave his face. "Have you ever done it, Grandpa, sun-fishing?" "Sure, a couple of times." Once, actually, but it was a vivid lesson. With Cindy Murkett in her black bikini that showed the hairs in her crotch, her breasts slip-sloppy in their little black sling. The wind tugging, the water slapping, the sun wielding its silent white hammer on their skins, the two of them alone and nearly naked. "Sounds neat," Judy ventures, adding, "I got a prize in my camp swimming class for staying underwater the longest." She returns her gaze to the television, rapidly flicking through the channels with the hand control. Channel surfing, kids call it. Harry tries to imagine the world seen through her clear green eyes, every little thing vivid and sharp and new, packed full of itself like a satin valentine. His own vision feels fogged, no matter which glasses he puts on, for reading or far vision. He wears the latter only for movies and night driving, and refuses to get bifocals. Glasses worn for more than an hour at a time hurt his ears. And the lenses are always dusty, and the things he looks at all seem tired. He's seen them too many times before. A kind of drought has settled over the world, a bleaching such as overtakes old color prints, even the ones kept in a drawer. Except, strangely, the first fairway of a golf course before his first swing. This vista is ever fresh. There, on the tee's earth platform, standing in his large white-spiked foot-joys and blue sweat socks, drawing the long tapered steel wand of the Lynx Predator driver from the bag, he feels tall again, tall the way he used to on a hardwood basketball floor, when after those first minutes his growing momentum and lengthening bounds and leaps reduced the court to childlike dimensions, to the size of a tennis court and then a ping-pong table, his legs unthinkingly eating the distances up, back and forth, and the hoop with its dainty skirt-like net dipping down to be there on the layups. So, in golf, the distances, the hundreds of yards, dissolve to a few effortless swings if you find the inner magic, the key. Always, golf for him holds out the hope of perfection, of a perfect weightlessness and consummate ease. For now and again it does happen, happens in 3 dimensions, shot after shot. But then he gets human and tries to force it, to make it happen, to get 10 extra yards, to steer it, and it goes away, grace you could call it, the feeling of collaboration, of being bigger than he really is. When you stand up on the first tee, it is there, it comes back from wherever it lives during the rest of your life, endless possibility, the possibility of a flawless round, a round without a speck of dirt in it, without a missed 2-footer or a flying right elbow, without a pushed wood or pulled iron. The first fairway is in front of you, palm trees on the left and water on the right, flat as a picture. All you have to do is take a simple, pure swing and puncture the picture in the middle, with a ball that shrinks in a second to the size of a needle prick, a tiny tunnel into the absolute. That would be it. But on his practice swing, his chest gives a twang of pain, and this makes him think, for some reason, of Nelson. The kid jangles in his mind. As he stands up to the ball, he feels crowded, but is impatient and hits it outside in, trying too hard with his right hand. The ball starts out promisingly, but leaks more and more to the right, and disappears not far enough from the edge of the long, scummy pond of water. "Afraid that's alligator territory," Bernie says sadly. Bernie is his partner for the round. "Mulligan?" Harry asks. There is a pause. Ed Silberstein asks Joe Gold, "What do you think?" Joe tells Harry, "I didn't notice that we took any mulligans." Harry says, "You cripples don't hit it far enough to get into trouble. We always give mulligans on the first drive. That's been our tradition." Ed says, "Angstrom, how are you ever going to live up to your potential if we keep babying you with mulligans?" Joe says, "How much potential you think a guy with a gut like that still has? I think his potential has all gone to his colon." While they are thus ribbing him, Rabbit takes another ball from his pocket and tees it up, and, with a stiff half-swing, sends it safely but ingloriously down the left side of the fairway. Perhaps not quite safely. It seems to hit a hard spot and keeps bouncing toward a palm tree. "Sorry, Bernie," he says. "I'll loosen up." "Am I worried?" Bernie asks, putting his foot to the electric cart pedal a split second before Harry has settled into the seat beside him. "With your brawn and my brains, we'll cream these oafs." Bernie Drexel, Ed Silberstein, and Joe Gold are all older than Harry and shorter, and usually make him feel good about himself. With them he is a big Swede. They call him Angstrom, a comical pet Gentile, a big, pale, uncircumcised hunk of the American dream. He, in turn, treasures their perspective. It seems more manly than his, sadder and wiser and less shaky. Their long history has put all that suffering in its pocket and strides on. Harry asks Bernie, as the cart rolls over the tamped and glistening grass toward their balls, "What do you think about all this fuss about this Deion Sanders? In the paper this morning, he even has the mayor of Fort Myers making excuses for him." Bernie shifts the cigar in his mouth an inch and says, "It's cruel, you know, to take these black kids out of nowhere and give 'em all this publicity and turn them into millionaires. No wonder they go crazy. The paper says the crowd kept the cops from giving him room. He had flipped out at some sales clerk who said he had stolen a pair of earrings. He even took a pop at her." "I don't know about Sanders," Bernie says, "but a lot of it's drugs, cocaine. The stuff is everywhere." "You wonder what people see in it," Rabbit says. "What they see in it," Bernie says, stopping the cart and resting his cigar on the edge of the plastic ledge for holding drinks or beer cans, "is instant happiness." He squares up to his second shot with that awful stance of his feet too close together, his bald head dipping down in a reverse weight shift, and punches the ball with a 4-iron, all arms and wrists. It stays straight, though, and winds up within an easy chip in front of the elevated green. "There are 2 routes to happiness," he continues, back at the wheel of the cart. "Work for it day after day like you and I did, or take a chemical shortcut. With the world the way it is, these kids take the shortcut. The long way looks too long." "Yeah, well, it is long, and then when you've gone the distance, where's the happiness?" "Behind you," the other man admits. "What interests me about Sanders and kids like that," Rabbit says, as Bernie speeds along down the sun-baked freeway, dodging fallen brown fronds and coconuts, is I had a little taste of it once. Athletics. Everybody cheering, loving you, wanting a piece. Sure you did. It sticks out all over, just the way you waggle the club. Afraid you made the palm tree, though. You're stymied, my friend." Bernie stops the cart a little close to the ball for Harry's comfort. "I think I can hook it around." "Don't try it. Chip it out. You know what Tommy Armour says. Take your stroke in a situation like this and go for the green on the next one. Don't attempt a miracle." "Well, you're already up there for a sure bogey. Let me try to bend it on." The palm tree is one of those whose trunk looks like a giant braid. It breathes on him with its faint rustle, its dim smell like that of a friendly attic full of dried-out old-school papers and love letters. There's a lot of death in Florida, if you look. The palms grow by the lower branches dying and dropping off. The hot sun hurries the life cycles along. Harry takes his stance with his hip almost touching the jagged, rough trunk, hoods the 5-iron, and imagines the curving arc of the miracle shot and Bernie's glad cry of congratulation. But, in fact, the closeness of the tree and maybe of Bernie in the cart inhibits his swing, and he pulls the ball with the hooded club. so it hits the top of the next palm along the fairway and drops straight down into the short rough. The rough, though, in Florida isn't like the rough up north. It's just spongy, pale grass a half-inch longer than fairway. They tailor these courses for the elderly and lame. They baby you down here. Bernie sighs. Stubborn, he says as Harry gets back in. You guys think the world will melt if you whistle. Harry knows that guys is polite for goys. The thought that he might be wrong, that obstacles won't melt if he whistles, renews that dull internal ache of doom he felt in the airport. As he stands up to his third shot, an 8-iron he estimates, Bernie's disapproval weighs on his arms and causes him to hit a bit fat, enough to take the click out of the ball and leave it 10 yards short. Sorry, Bernie. Chip up close and get your par. But Bernie fluffs the chip, all wrists again and too quick, and they both get sixes, losing the hole to Ed Silverstein's routine bogey. Ed is a wiry, retired accountant from Toledo, whose dark, upright hair and a slender, thrusting jaw that makes him look as if he's about to smile all the time. He never seems to get the ball more than 10 feet off the ground, but he keeps it moving toward the hole. You guys looked like Dukakis on that one, he crows, blowing it. Don't knock the Duke, Joe says. He gave us honest government for a change. The Boston Pauls can't forgive him for it. Joe Gold owns a couple of liquor stores in some city in Massachusetts called Framingham. He is stocky and sandy and wears glasses so thick they make his eyes look like they're trying to escape from 2 little fish bowls jumping from side to side. He and his wife, Bew for Beulah, are very quiet condo neighbors next door. You wonder what they do all the time in there. They never make any noise. Ed says he wimped out when it counted. He should have stood up and said, "Sure, I'm a liberal and damn proud of it." Yeah, how would that have played in the South and the Midwest, Joe asks. In California and Florida, for that matter, with all these old farts who all they want to hear is no more taxes. Lousy, Ed admits, but he wasn't going to get their votes anyway. His only hope was to get the poor excited. Knock away that 3-footer, Angstrom. I've already written down your 6. I need the practice, Harry says, and strokes it and watches it rim out on the left edge. Not his day. Will he ever have a day again? 55 and fading. His own son can't stand to be in the same room with him. Ruth once called him Mr. Death. He was going for those Reagan Democrats, Joe continues explaining, except there aren't any Reagan Democrats. They're just cut-and-dried rednecks. Now that I'm down south here, I understand better what it's all about. It's all about blacks. 130 years after Abe Lincoln, the Republicans have got the anti-black vote, and it's bigger than any Democratic presidential candidate can cope with, barring a massive depression or a boo-boo the size of Watergate. Ollie North doesn't do it. Reagan being an airhead didn't do it. Face it, the bulk of this country is scared to death of the blacks. That's the one gut issue we've got. After that episode with Skeeter 20 years ago, Rabbit has had mixed feelings about blacks, and whenever the subject comes up, he tends to hold his tongue lest he betray himself one way or another. Bernie, what do you think? Harry asks, while they're watching the 2 others hit from the second tee, a 136-yard par 3 over that same scummy pond. He finds Bernie the wisest of the 3, the most phlegmatic and slowest to speak. He never came back totally from some open-heart surgery he had a few years ago. He moves cumbersomely, has emphysema and a bit of a humpback, and the slack look of a plump man who lost weight because his doctor told him to. His color isn't good. His lower lip in profile looks loose. I think, he says, Dukakis tried to talk intelligently to the American people, and we aren't ready for it. Bush talked to us like we were a bunch of morons, and we ate it up. Can you imagine the Pledge of Allegiance, read my lips? Can you imagine such crap in this day and age? Ailes and those others, they made him into a beer commercial. Head for the mountains. Bernie sang this last phrase, his voice quavery but touchingly true. Rabbit is impressed by this ability Jews seem to have, to sing and to dance, to give themselves to the moment. They sing at Seder, he knows, because Bernie and Fern had them to a Seder one April just before heading north. Passover. The angel of death passed over. Harry had never understood the word before. Let this cup pass from me. Bernie concludes, to my mind there were 2 possibilities about Bush. He believed what he was saying or he didn't. I don't know which is more terrifying. He's what we call a pisher. Dukakis always looked like he was sore about something, Rabbit offers. This is as close as he can bring himself to admit that, alone in this foursome, he voted for Bush. Bernie maybe guesses it. He says, "After 8 years of Reagan, I would have thought more people would have been sore than were. If you could ever get the poor to vote in this country, you'd have socialism. But people want to think rich. That's the genius of the capitalist system. Either you're rich, or you want to be, or you think you ought to be." Rabbit liked Reagan. He liked the foggy voice, the smile, the big shoulders, the way his head kept wagging during the long pauses, the way he floated above the facts, knowing there was more to government than facts, and the way he could change direction while saying he was going straight ahead, pulling out of Beirut, getting cozy with Gorby, running up the national debt. The strange thing was, except for the hopeless down-and-outers, the world became a better place under him. The communists fell apart, except for in Nicaragua, and even there he put them on the defensive. The guy had a magic touch. He was a dream man. Harry dares say, under Reagan, you know, it was like anesthesia. Ever had an operation, a real operation? Not really. Tonsils when I was a kid. Appendix when I was in the Army. They took it out in case I was sent to Korea. Then I was never sent. I had a quadruple bypass 3 years ago. I know, Bern, I remember you telling me, but you look great now. When you come out of anesthesia, it hurts like hell. You can't believe you can live with such pain. To get at your heart, they split your whole rib cage open. They crack you open like a coconut. And they pull the best veins they can find out of your upper leg. So when you come out of it, your groin's killing you as well as your chest. Wow. Harry inappropriately laughs, since while Bernie is talking to him on the cart, Ed, with that pompous, fussy setup he has, laying his hands on the club finger by finger, like he's doing flower arrangement, and then peeking toward the hole 5 or 6 times before swinging, as if he's trying to shake loose cobwebs or a tick in his collar, looked up during the swing, so the topped ball scuttered into the water, skipping 3 times before sinking, leaving 3 expanding, interlocking sets of rings on the water. Alligator food. 6 hours I was on the table, Bernie is urging into his ear. I woke up and I couldn't move. I couldn't even open my eyelids. They freeze you, so your blood flow is down to almost nothing. I was like locked into a black coffin. No, it's like I was the coffin. And then out of this blackness I hear this weird voice with a thick Indian accent, the Pakistani anesthetist. Joe Gold, with his partner's ball in the water, tries to hit it too quick to get a ball in play, jerking the club back in 2 stages like he does, and then roundhousing with that flat swing stocky guys tend to have. He pushes the shot off so he catches the pot bunker on the right. Bernie is doing a high, spacey Pakistani voice. "Bernie, Bernie," this voice says. So honest to God, I think maybe it's the voice of God. "Operation a success." Harry has heard the story before, but laughs anyway. It's a good, scary story about the edge of death. "Bernie, Bernie," Bernie repeats, like it came out of the clouds to Abraham to go cut Isaac's throat. Harry asks, shall we keep the same order? He feels he disgraced himself on the previous hole. "You go first, Angstrom. I think it shakes you up too much to hit last. Go for it. Show these nudniks how it's done." This is what Rabbit hoped to hear. He takes a 7-iron and tries to think of 5 things. Keeping his head down, keeping his backswing from being too long, moving his hip while the club is still at the top, keeping his downswing smooth, and keeping the club face square on the ball, at that point on the sphere where the clock face says 3:15. From the whistly instant way the ball vanishes from the center of his held-down vision, he knows the hit is sweet. They all together watch the dark dot rise, hover that little ghostly extra bit that gives the distance, and then drop straight down on the green, a hair to the left but what looks pin-high, the ball bouncing right with the slant of the bowl-shaped green. The world is beginning to melt. "Beauty," Ed has to admit. "How about a mulligan?" Joe asks. "We'll give you one this time." Bernie asks, pushing himself out of the cart, "What iron was that?" Bernie asks, pushing himself out of the cart, "What iron was that?" 7. "Gonna hit him like that, my friend, you should use an 8. "Think I'm past the hole?" "Way past. You're on the back edge." Some partner. There's no satisfying him. like Marty Totherow nearly 40 years ago. Get 25 points a game, Marty wanted 35 and would talk about a missed layup. The soldier in Harry, the masochistic Christian, respects men like this. It's total, uncritical love, such as women provide, that makes you soft and does you in. For me, I think a choked-up 6, Bernie says. But in trying to take something off the shot, he takes off too much and leaves it short, over the water, but on the bank where it's hard to take a stance. Tough chip from there, Harry says, unable to resist a gentle needle. He still blames Bernie for parking the cart so close on that attempted deliberate hook. Bernie accepts the needle. "Especially after that last shitty chip of mine, huh?" he says, pushing his cut-up, deflated, humpbacked old body into the cart, Harry having slid over into the driver's seat. The guy who's on the green has earned the right to drive. Harry feels momentum building. They're going to cream these oafs. He glides over the water on an arched wooden bridge with red rubber treads laid over the planks. "From where you are," Bernie tells him as they get out, "the green slopes down. Hit your putt too hard, you'll slide miles beyond." Ed, with a ball in the water, is out of it. Bernie's stance on the steep bank is so awkward he whiffs the ball once, shanks it sideways on his next swing, and picks up. But Sandy Joe Gold, in his element, waggles his feet to plant himself and manages a good blast shot out of the pot bunker. With Bernie's advice preying on in his mind, interfering with his own instincts, Harry strokes his long approach putt tentatively and leaves it 4 feet short. He marks it with a Valhalla Village marker, while Joe two-putts for his bogey. Joe takes his time and gives Harry too long to study his 4-footer. He sees a break, then doesn't see it. In trying to avoid lipping out on the left like he did on the last hole, he loses his par putt, very makeable, an inch to the right. Son of a bitch, he says, frustration pressing from behind his eyes so hard he thinks he might burst into tears. On in one and a fucking 3-putt. It happens, Ed says, writing down the 4 with his trained accountant's primness. Tie-ho. Sorry, Bern, Harry says, climbing back into the cart on the passenger side. I screwed you up, his partner says. Should have kept my yap shut about the green being downhill. He unwraps another cigar and, pushing the pedal, leans back into a long day. Not Harry's day. The Florida sun seems not so much a single thing overhead, but a set of Klieg lights that pursue you everywhere with an even white illumination. Even directly under palm trees and right up against the 12-foot pine fences that separate the village from the rest of the world, the sun finds you, reddening the tip of Rabbit's nose and baking his forearms and the back of his non-gloved hand, which is already dotted with little white bumps of keratosis. He carries a tube of number 15 sunscreen in his golf bag and is always dabbing it on, but the ultraviolet gets through anyway, cooking his squamous cells into skin cancer. The 3 men he plays with never use anything and just get a comfortable tan. Even the bald top of Bernie's head is smooth as an ostrich egg, with only a few small specks on it, as he bends over his shots with that awful reverse shift, squeezed feet stance of his. Harry feels Bernie's steady, mechanically repeating ineptitude, short shots, chunked chips, a burden today since he can't quite carry him, and wonders why somebody who exudes suffering wisdom the way Bernie does never learns a thing about golf or even seems to try. To him, Harry supposes it's just a game, a way of killing time in the sun at this stage of his life. Bernie was a boy once, and then a man making money and children. A carpet business in Queens. 2 daughters who married nice, solid guys, and a son who went to Princeton and the Wharton School in Philadelphia and became a hostile takeover specialist on Wall Street. And now he's at the other end of life's rainbow, and this is what you do. Bernie endures retirement fun in Florida the way he's endured his entire life, sucking that same acrid, wet cigar taste out of it. He doesn't see what Harry sees in the game, infinity, an opportunity for infinite improvement. Rabbit doesn't see it himself today. Around the 11th hole, a dogleg par 5 that he butchers, slicing his second shot, a 4-wood, so wildly it winds up in a condo's side yard, between some plastic trash cans and a concrete slab with some rusting steel clothesline poles sunk in it. A German shepherd chained to the clothesline barks at him, lunging toward him so the taut wire sings, and Gold and Silberstein loafing in their cart cackle, and Bernie chomps deeper and looks morose. Taking the out-of-bounds drop for a 4, while the dog keeps barking and barking. Trying to hit a 3-iron so hard he digs 6 inches behind and sprays sand all over his shoes and into the tops of his socks. Pulling the next iron to the left into a bed of parched and shedding azaleas beside the 12th tee, taking a drop for another stroke, sculling the chip clear across over the green. All 3 playing partners keeping a ghastly silence now, shocked, mourning for him, or is it holding in their glee? Plunking the next sand shot against the trap lip so it dribbles back, and picking up in disgust, and even hitting himself on the knee when after raking he flips the sand rake to one side. After this hole, the game and day begin to eat him into a state of depression. The grass looks greasy and unreal. Every other palm tree is dying from the drought and dropping stiff brown fronds. The condos line every fairway like tall stucco outhouses, and even the sky, where your eyes can usually find relief, is dirtied by jet trails that spread and wander until they are indistinguishable from God's pure clouds. The hours pile on, noon comes and goes, the Klieg lights begin to dim, but the heat is turned up higher. They finish at 2:45, Harry and Bernie $20 down, both sides of a $5 Nassau plus the 18 and a press on the second 9 that they lost. "We'll get 'em next time," Harry promises his partner, not really believing it. "You weren't quite yourself today, my friend," Bernie admits. "You got girlfriend trouble or something?" Horny, Jews are. He once read a history of Hollywood about their womanizing. Harry Cohn, Groucho Marx, the Warner Brothers, they went crazy out there with the sunshine and swimming pools and all the Midwestern chickses who'd do anything to be movie stars, participate in orgies, blow a mogul while he was talking on the telephone. Yet his golf partners are all married to the same women, 40, 50 years, women with big dyed hair and thick bangles and fat brown upper arms, who can't stop talking when you see them all dolled up at dinner. Bernie and Ed and Joe sitting smilingly silent beside them as if all this talking their women do is sex, which it must be. Pep. Life. How do they do it? Wear life like a suit made to fit exactly. "I guess I told you," Harry tells Bernie. "My son and his family are visiting." "There's your problem, Angstrom. You felt guilty horsing around with us. You should have been entertaining your loved ones." "Yeah, entertain 'em. They just got here yesterday and are acting bored already. They want us to live next door to Disney World." "Take them to Jungle Gardens up in Sarasota, down 41 from the Ringling Museum. Fern and I go there 2-3 times a winter and never get bored. I could watch those flamingos sleep for hours. How do they do it? Balanced on one leg 2 feet long and thinner than my finger." He holds up a finger and it seems thick. "Thinner than that," he swears. "I don't know, Bernie. When I'm around, my kid acts like he doesn't want my own grandchildren to have anything much to do with me. The little boy, he's 4, is pretty much a stranger, but the girl and I could get along. She's almost 9. I was even thinking I should bring her out in a cart sometime and let her try to hit the ball. Or maybe rent a sunfish, Ed, if your son over at the Bayview could write me up as a guest." The foursome is having beers and free munchies in Club 19, next to the Pro Shop, on the bottom floor of Building A of Valhalla Village. The darkness inside, the dark panels and beams in the style of an English pub, is intensified by the subtropical brightness outside, at the round white tables under umbrellas saying Coors. You can hear the splashing from the pool between buildings A and B, and the throbbing of a generator housed on the other side of the wall, beyond the restrooms and dartboards and video games. At night sometimes Harry imagines he can hear the generator throbbing through all the intervening apartments, carpets, air conditioners, conversations, mattresses, and peach-colored hall wallpaper. Somehow the noise curves around and clings to the walls and comes in his big sliding window, the crack that's left open to the Gulf air. "No problem," Ed says as he totals their scores. "Just show up at the front desk and ask for Greg Silvers. That's what he calls himself. Don't ask me why. They'll let you walk through the lobby and downstairs to the changing rooms. I don't advise wearing bathing suits into the lobby. They try to discourage that. Do you have a day I can tell him to expect you?" Harry gets the impression this may be a realer favor than he thought, a bigger deal than it's worth. "Friday, if ever," he says. "Does Greg have to know for sure? Tomorrow I thought we'd head up Sarasota way." "Jungle Gardens," Bernie insists. "Lionel Train Museum," Joe Gold contributes, "and right across from the Ringling Museum there's Belm's Cars and Music of Yesterday, is I think what they call it. Over 1,000 music machines, can you imagine? Antique cars from 1897. I never knew there were cars then. You're in the car business, aren't you, Angstrom? You and your boy? You'll both go ape in there." "I don't know," Harry begins, groping to express the curious cloud that Nelson carries with him that dampens any outing. "Harry, this is interesting," Ed says. "Giving you a 7, 2 over par for handicap purposes on the 11th, where you picked up, and a courtesy 6 on the 16th, where you put 2 balls in the water, you scored an even 90, even so. You weren't playing as bad as it looked. Waste a few less drives and long irons, and you'll be in the 80s every time." "I couldn't get my ass into it. I couldn't release," Harry says. "I couldn't let go." He has an unaskable question for these wise Jewish men. How about death? He asks them, "Hey, how about that Pan Am jet?" There is a pause. "It has to be a bomb," Ed says. "When you've got splinters of steel driven right through leather luggage and wreckage strewn across 50 miles of Scotland, it has to be a bomb." Bernie sighs. "It's them again, the Shiite heads." "Arabs," Joe Gold says. A patriotic glee lights his wobbling eyes. "Once we got proof, the F-111s will be flying into Libya again. What we ought to do is keep going right into Iran and stick it to the old Ayatollah." But their tongues are less quick than usual. Harry has made them uneasy with what he hadn't meant to be so much a political question. With Jews, everything in the papers comes back to Israel. "I mean," he says, "how the hell do you think it feels, sitting there and having the plane explode?" "Well, I bet it wakes you up," Ed says. "They didn't feel a thing," Bernie says, considerately, sensing Harry's personal worry. "Zero. It was over that quick." Joe says to Harry, "You know what the Israelis say, don't you, Angstrom? If we got to have enemies, thank God they're Arabs." Harry has heard this before, but tries to laugh. Bernie says, "I think Angstrom could use a new partner. I depress him." "It wasn't you, Bernie. I came depressed." Club 19 puts out a wonderful array of nibbles in little china bowls monogrammed with Valhalla Village's logo. 2 sea blue intertwined V's. Not just dry-roasted peanuts and almonds and hazelnuts, but tiny pretzel sticks and salted pumpkin seeds and tight curls resembling corn chips, only finer and sharper in the mouth in that blissful instant while the tongue works one around to be crunched between the molars. The other men take only a pinch of this starchy, salty salad now and then, but soon the bowl is empty, Rabbit doing 80% of the eating. "That crap's loaded with sodium," Bernie warns him. "Yeah, but it's good for the soul," Harry says, about as religious a remark as he dares put forth. "Who else is ready for another beer?" he asks. "Losers buy this round." He is beginning to feel expansive. His dark mood is thinning like a squirt of ink in alcohol's gentle solvent. He waves for the waiter and asks him to bring along with 4 more beers another bowl of munchies. The waiter, a fawn-like young Hispanic with an earring bigger than Nelson's and gold chains on both wrists, nods in a timid way. Harry must seem enormous to him, menacingly white and pink and sodden with sodium-retained water. The whole quartet must seem loud and potentially unruly. Ugly old gringos. Another squirt of ink. Harry feels heavy again. Good times in Florida are never as good as those boozy late afternoons at his old club back in Diamond County, the Flying Eagle. Before Buddy Inglefinger married that lanky, crazy hippie Valerie and moved to Royersford, and Thelma Harrison got too sick with lupus ever to show up, and Cindy Merkett got fat, and Webb divorced her so you never saw anybody anymore. In Florida the people are so cautious, as if on 2 beers they might fall down and break a hip. The whole state is brittle. "Your boy play golf?" Joe is asking him. "Not really. He's never had the temperament. Or the time," he says. And, Rabbit might have added, he never really invited him. "What does he do for fun?" Ed asks. These men, it dawns on Harry, are being polite. By ordering another round of beers, he has stretched the 19th hole camaraderie beyond where it's effortless. These guys' sexy elderly wives are waiting. Gossip to catch up on. Letters from dutiful, prospering children to read. Interest to add up. Torah to study. "Beats me," Harry says. "Hangs around with a bunch of brewer creeps, swinging singles, sort of. I never see him having much fun. He never went in for sports." "The way you talk about him," Bernie said, "he could be the father and you the son." Rabbit agrees enthusiastically. With a boost from the second beer, he almost has a vision. "Yeah, and a delinquent son at that. That's how he sees me, an old juvenile delinquent. His wife looks miserable." Where did that come from? Was it true? Help me, guys. Tell me how you've got on top of sex and death so they don't bother you. He goes on. The whole family, the 2 kids too, seem on edge. I don't know what's up. Your wife, does she know what's up? That mutt. Harry ignores the question. Just last night I tried to talk to the kid in a friendly fashion, and all he did was bitch about Toyotas. The company that feeds us, that saved him and his old man and his shady little crook of a grandfather from being bums, and all he does is complain about how Toyotas aren't Lamborghinis. Jesus, that beer went down fast. It felt like the Gobi Desert out there. Harry, you don't want another beer. You want to get home and tell your family about Belms. Bellms. I know it sounds like I can't spell. Every old car you could imagine, from before steering wheels, before gears even. To be honest, guys, I've never been that much into cars. I drive 'em, I sell 'em, but I've never really understood the damn things. To me, they're all alike. Great if they go, lousy if they don't. The other men are standing up. I want to see you out here tomorrow afternoon with your little granddaughter. Teach her the basics. Head down, slow takeaway. That was Bernie talking. Ed Silberstein tells him, "Work on shortening that backswing, Harry. You don't need all that above the shoulders. The hit is right in here, right by your pecker. Best advice I ever had from a golf pro was imagine you're hitting it with your pecker." They have sensed his silent cry for help, for consolation, and are becoming more Jewish on Harry's behalf, it seems to him as he sits there. Bernie has pushed up from the table and towers over Harry with his gray skin, his loose dewlaps full of shadows. "We have an expression," he says downward. "Tsuris. Sounds to me, my friend, like you got some tsuris. Not full grown yet, not gehooketh tsuris, but tsuris." Pleasantly dazed with alcohol, his chest distantly stinging, the tip of his nose beginning to feel sunburn, Harry has no inclination to move, though the world around him is in motion. 2 young college kid hotshots who were pressing them from behind all afternoon have finished and are making the video games over by the restrooms warble, zing, whistle, and bleat. Animated automatons in many colors appear and disappear on the screen. He sees his white fingers, with the big moons on their fingernails, absent-mindedly dabble at the bottom of the bowl of munchies, as if he is trying to pick up the intertwined V's. The junk food has been consumed. He cannot be absolutely sure in memory if the waiter ever brought a new bowl. Joe Gold, his hair a sandy mane, his magnified eyes surging back and forth within his squarish spectacles, bends down a bit, as if rooting his feet again in a trap, and says, "Here's a Jewish joke for you. Abe meets Izzy after a long time no see. He asks, 'How many children do you have?' Izzy says, 'None.' Abe says, 'None? So what do you do for aggravation?'" Their laughter seems speeded up like the action in a beer commercial. Their mockery in its unnatural unison holds a premonition for Harry that he has wasted the day, that now he must hurry to catch up like when he used to run late to school with a watery flutter in his stomach. The 3 other men, returning to their solid domestic arrangements, in farewell cuff at him, even pinch the nape of his neck, as if to rouse him from a spiritual torpor. In Florida, he thinks, even friendship has a thin provisional quality, since people might at any minute buy another condominium and move to it, or else up and die. You leave the clubs with the pro shop and the shoes. Rabbit walks in his moccasins, worn so loose his feet move in them without seeming to rub leather, across the parking lot and a striped piece of driveway, and one of the complex's little traffic islands covered in green outdoor carpeting to the entryway of Building B. He uses his key and punches in the code on the panel in the narrow space where 2 closed-circuit television cameras are watching him, pulls the door. It doesn't buzz, it goes ding, ding, ding like a fire truck backing up, and takes the elevator to the 4th floor. In 413, his home away from home, Janice and Prue and the kids are playing hearts. That is, 3 of them are, and Roy is holding a fistful of cards while his mother tells him what to do and which to discard. His face has a puffy look, as though it's been an afternoon of frustrations and disappointments. They all greet Harry as if he's going to rescue them from boredom, but he feels so beat, all he wants to do is lie down and let his body soak in nothingness. He asks, "Where's Nelson?" It's not the right question, at least in front of the kids. Janice and Prue glance toward one another, and then Prue volunteers. He's out doing a few errands in the car. Down here they only have one car, the Camry, leaving Harry's Celica back in Penn Park. It works out since most everything they need, drugs, magazines, haircuts, bathing suits, tennis balls, they can find within the Valhalla complex. The little food commissary in Building C charges airport prices, so Janice usually does a big shopping once a week, at the Winn-Dixie a half-mile down Pinto Palm Boulevard. About once a week they visit their bank in downtown Delian, on a plaza 2 blocks back from the beachfront where elevator music is always playing, both inside the bank and outside. They must have speakers hidden in the trees. Maybe twice a month they go to a movie at a Cineplex in a giant mall over on Palmetto Palm Boulevard 2 miles away. But days at a stretch go by when the car just sits there in its parking slot, attracting rust and white splotches of bird shit. What kind of errands does he have to do? Oh, Harry, Janice says, people need things. He doesn't like the kind of beer you buy. He likes a special kind of dental floss, tape instead of thread. And he likes to drive around. He gets claustrophobic. We all get claustrophobic, he tells her. Most of us don't go stealing cars about it. You look exhausted. Did you lose? How'd you guess? You always lose. He plays with these 3 Jewish men, she explains to her daughter-in-law, and they always take $20 off of him. Don't be so prejudiced. You sound like your mother. And for your information, I win as often as not. I never hear about it when you do. They keep telling you how good you are and then take your money. You dope, one of them lost $20 with me. He was my partner. Serenely, she says, just like her mother, addressing nobody in particular, they probably give it back to him. They're all in cahoots. It occurs to him that she is saying these disagreeable and absurd things as a distraction from Nelson's rude and mysterious absence. Judy says, Grandpa, come take Roy's hand and play. He doesn't know how to even hold the cards, and he's being fussy. Roy obligingly proves her point by throwing the cards down on the round glass table, much as this morning he threw the spoon. I hate games, he says, with a curious precision, like one of those old-fashioned dolls that would say a little speech when you pulled a string that came out of their backs. Judy swiftly whomps him, with the hand not holding her cards. She chops with her fist at his shoulders and neck, and when he squalls in self-defense, explains to him, You messed up the trick, so now nobody can play, and I was going to shoot the moon. Prue neatly fans her hand face down on the table, and with the other arm, a downy arm of long, loving bones, pulls the wailing little boy against her chest. Seeing this, Judy flares into jealousy, goes pink-eyed, the way women do before they decide to cry, and races off toward Harry and Janice's bedroom. Prue smiles wanly, looking exhausted herself. Everybody's tired and cranky, she sort of sings, over the top of Roy's head so Judy can hear it too. Janice stands a bit wobbly for a second. She knocks the glass table with her shin, and next to her abandoned hand of hearts, an orange juice glass half full of Campari shivers, the scarlet circlet of it making him think of the pond when Ed's ball skipped in. She is back into her tennis dress. Dried sweat stains on its side and beneath the arms are outlined like continents on a very faint map. Maybe we made them do too much, she explains to Harry. We did this enormous shopping, went to lunch at Burger King, came back here, Prue took them for swimming and shuffleboard for 2 hours, and then Judy and I went over to the tennis courts and knocked the ball around. How'd she do, he asks. Janice laughs as if surprised. Terrific, actually. She's going to be a jock, just like you. Rabbit goes into his bedroom. If nobody but Janice were here, he would lie on this bed, push his eyes through a few pages of the history book she gave him for Christmas, close his eyes on the sound of the bird dryly chirping in the Norfolk pine, and succumb to the great heaviness of being. But Judy has beat him to his own king-size bed with its jade-green fitted coverlet. She is curled up and hiding her face. He lies down close to the edge and lets her press her knees against his presence. He admires her hair, the amazing protein perfection of it, the long pale strands that in sun deepen to a shiny orange. Better rest up for bingo tonight, he says. If Roy goes, I'm not going, she says. Don't be down on Roy, he tells her. He's a good scout. He's not. I was going to shoot the moon. I'd already took the Queen of Spades, and I had the Ace of Hearts and the Jack and some others, and then he ruins it all, and Mommy thinks that's so cute. He gets all the attention and everything ever since he was born, just because he's a boy. He admits, it's tough. I was in your shoes, except it was reversed. I had a sister instead of a brother. Didn't you hate her? She removes her face from her folded arms and stares up at him with rubbed-looking green eyes. He answers, No, I guess, to be honest, I loved her. I loved Mim. The truth of this shocks him. He realizes how few others in his life he has loved so bluntly, without something of scorn, as his little wiry Mim. Her face seemed a narrower, harder version of his, with the same straight small nose and short upper lip, only a brunette and a girl. Himself transposed into quite another key, and yet the melody recognizable. He remembers the sticky grip of her fingers in his when Mom and Pop would lead them on their Sunday walk, up the mountain to the Pinnacle Hotel and then back along the edge of the quarry. Mim hung on and roused protectiveness in him, and perhaps used it up for everybody else, for every other female. Mim, as his own blood sister, had a certain unforced claim over him no woman since has been able to establish. Was she younger than you or older? Younger. Younger even than me, than Roy is than you. But she was a girl, and girls are less ornery than boys. Though I guess Mim was ornery in her way. Once she got to be 16, she put my parents through hell. Grandpa, what's ornery? Oh, you know, mean, contrary, rebellious. Like Daddy? I don't think of your daddy as ornery, just, what's the word, very uptight about things. People get to him more than they do to most people. Formulating even this much thickens his tongue and blurs his mind. Judy, let's have a contest. You lie over there, and I'll lie here, and we'll see who can fall asleep soonest. Who will be the judge? Your mother, he says, letting his moccasins fall from his feet onto the floor over the edge of the bed. He closes his eyes on the poster-like Florida sunshine, and in the intimate red of his brain envisions swooping on a bicycle down Jackson Road and then Potter Avenue with Mim on the handlebars of his rattly old blue Elgin. She may be 6 and he 12. If they hit a rock or pothole, she'd go flying with him and the bike on top of her, grinding her into the asphalt and ruining her pretty face forever. A woman's face is her fortune. But in her faith in him she sings. He can't remember the song, just the sensation of snatches of words flicked back into his ears as her long black hair whips against his eyes and mouth, making the bicycle ride more dangerous still. He led Mim into danger, but always led her out. Shoe-fly pie. That was one of the songs she used to sing around the house day after day until it drove them all crazy. Shoe-fly pie and apple pan dowdy, makes your eyes light up, your tummy say howdy. And then she would do a thing with her eyes that would make the whole rest of the family laugh. He feels Judy ease her weight from his side, and with that exaggerated, creaking stealth of small children, move around the foot of the bed and out of the room. The door clicks. Female voices whisper. Their whispers merge with a dream, involving an enormous scoop-shaped space, an amphitheater, an audience somehow for whom he is performing. Though there is no other person in the dream, just this sense of presence, of echoing, august, dreadfully serious presence. He wakes frightened, with dribble down from one corner of his mouth. He feels like a drum that has just been struck. The space he was dreaming of he now recognizes as his rib cage, as if he has become his own heart, a huffing, puffing, pumping man at mid-court, waiting for the whistle and the high-reaching jump-off. At some point in his sleep his chest began to ache, a stale, sorrowful ache he associates with the pathetically bad way he played golf this afternoon, unable to concentrate, unable to loosen up. He wonders how long he has slept. The poster of sunshine and palm tops and distant pink red-roofed buildings pasted on the outer skin of the sliding windows has dulled in tint, gone shadowy, and the sounds of golf, its purposeful concussions alternating with intent silence and involuntary cries of triumph or disappointment, have subsided. And in the air outside, like the fluttering tinsel above a used car lot, birds of many makes are calling to each other to wrap up the day. This hour or two before supper, when play, the last round of horse at the basket out by the garage in the alley, used to be most intense, has become nap time as he slowly sinks toward earth with his wasting muscles and accumulating fat. He must lose some weight. Only Judy is in the living room. She is flicking silently back and forth between channels. Faces, black in the Jeffersons, white in Family Ties, imploringly pop into visibility and then vanish amid shots of beer cans plunged into slow-motion waterfalls. George Bush lugging a gun through Texas underbrush. A Florida farmer gesturing toward his burnt fields. A Scotland Yard detective doing a little lecture with a diagram of an airplane's hold. "What's he saying?" Harry asks. But even as he asks, the image is gone, replaced by another, of a manatee being implanted with an electric tracking device by a male ponytailed manatee conservation freak. An impatient rage within the child, a gluttony for images, brushes the manatee away. 2 channels back, Harry begs, about the Pan Am plane. "It was a bomb, silly," Judy says. "It had to be." Children, they believe that headlines always happen to other people. "For Christ's sake, cool it with the channel changer. Let me get a beer and I'll show you a neat card game. Where is everybody?" "Grandma went to her women's group. Mom put Roy down for his nap." "Your daddy?" He thinks midway he shouldn't bring it up, but the words are out. Judy shrugs and finishes the sentence. "Hasn't checked in yet." It turns out she already knows how to play rummy. In fact, she catches him with his hand full of 3-of-a-kinds he was waiting to lay down when he had gin. Caught. Their laughter brings Prue out of her bedroom. In little white shorts her widened hips have stretched into horizontal wrinkles. Her face has taken wrinkles from the pillow, and seems a bit blurred and bloated by sleep or a spell of crying. How suggestible female flesh is. Her feet are long and bare, with that chipped toenail polish. He asks his daughter-in-law, "What's up?" She, too, shrugs. "I guess we'll go to dinner when Janice comes back. I'll feed Roy some applesauce to hold him." He and Judy play another hand of rummy, while Prue gently clatters in the kitchen and then coos to Roy. Evening down here comes without much ceremony. Suddenly the air beyond the balcony is gray, as if with fine fog, and sea scent drifts in through the sliding doors, and the sounds of birds and golf have gone away. This is peace. He resents it when Janice comes back with that aggressive glow her women's group gives her. "Oh, Harry, you men have been so awful. Not only were we considered chattel, but all those patriarchal religions tried to make us feel guilty about menstruating. They said we were unclean." "Sorry," he says, "that was a crummy thing to do." "That was Eve's basic sin, the lady professor told us," Janice goes on, half to Prue. "Something about apples being the color of blood. I couldn't quite follow it." Harry interrupts. "By any chance are either of you 2 Eves like me, sort of starving?" "We bought you lots of healthy snacks," Prue says. "Apricots dried without sulfur, unsalted banana chips." "Is that what that stuff was in little plastic bags? I thought it might be like for Chinese food and I shouldn't touch it." "Yes," Janice decides. "Let's just go to dinner. We'll leave a note for Nelson. Prue, any old dress. Evenings they won't seat shorts and men without jackets." The Mead Hall, on the floor of Building B above Club 19, is a combination restaurant and function room. On the one hand, there are menus with choices and prices, and waitresses in brief gold outfits echoing Valhalla's ring-gold theme, that figures here and there in the decor when the interior decorator remembered it, and there is even a wine steward in a summer tux and a kind of bicycle lock around his neck. On the other hand, as you go in, a bulletin board is loaded with announcements and leaflets and tinted sheets about this or that set of lessons or lecture or concert or square dance or travelogue you could attend in the area, and all the time you're eating, on Wednesday and Saturday nights, bingo goes on the other side of the room, run from a stage and microphone somewhat out of sight behind an enormous flanged pillar that holds up the room's starry curved ceiling. The ceiling is a skylight for part of its breadth, that strange, scooping, personified space in his dream. Could it have been simply this hall, conjured up because his stomach wanted food? Rabbit feels like Marty Totherow looking at the menu, faced for the 1,000th time with the same old choices among steak and veal, pork and ham, shrimps and scallops, swordfish Cajun style, and fillets of sole stuffed with mussels, mushrooms, and artichoke hearts. The pillar on two of its broad sides bears giant muddy ceramic murals about the Vikings. Broadswords and horned helmets and dragon-headed ships protrude from the enameled mass in its numerous blotchy colors. But the men wielding and wearing and sailing these protrusions are swallowed up in a crazy weave of arms and legs and lightning bolts, a kind of bloody basket-work in honor of history. 71, the lugubrious male voice hidden behind the pillar intones. It repeats, 7-1. It is hard to carry on a conversation with the numbers blaring from the loudspeakers. Prue mothers Roy and coaxes a little baked potato and a single stir-fried shrimp into him. Janice talks Judy into ordering a lobster and then has to show her how to crack it, how to push out the big curved piece of white meat with a finger up through the poor boiled creature's ass, how to suck the little tail segments the same way you suck artichoke leaves. Rabbit, who has ordered eye of round steak, can hardly bear to watch. To him, eating lobster, its many little feathery legs, its eyes on stalks, its antennae roasted red like the rest, is nightmarish, a descent back into the squirmy, scrabbly origins of life. Crabs, too, and oysters and clams. All around him in Florida he sees old people stuffing their faces with this filthy, gluey, unspeakable stuff, and telling you furthermore it's good for you, better than steak and hamburger, which is what he usually orders, though he doesn't mind a breaded pork chop or piece of veal, or a slice of ham with a pineapple ring or some moon-shaped snitzes of baked apple, and on the side some greasy Dutch fries like a slipping stack of poker chips. That's how ham comes in Pennsylvania. You can't get sausage down here, at least not the spicy pork sausage he was raised on, or scrapple drenched in maple syrup, or apple pie with enough cinnamon in it, or shoe-fly pie at all. Janice went to a nutrition group a few winters ago and came back telling him how he was clogging his arteries with all this fat and dough. So for a while there was a rash of salads and low-cal pasta and fish and fowl back in the condominium. But whenever he gets into the mead hall he can order what he wants. With steak, you have to specify well done or it comes rubbery and blue rare. Disgusting. All the things that satisfy your appetite and seem so beautiful are disgusting when you don't have the appetite. Disposable meat. Judy's perfect little hands are shiny with lobster. She asks her mother something, and he can see Prue's mouth move in response, but the godlike voice blocks their words right out with its solemn 27, 2, 7. "What are you saying, sweetie?" he asks, embarrassed. Is his hearing going, or do people talk a little differently, more rapidly and softly than they used to? On these TV shows that have British actors, there are stretches, especially when they put on the lower-class accents, where he can't understand a fucking word. And movies, especially in the love scenes, when the stars are establishing their coolness with the teenage audience. Prue explains, she's worried about Daddy not getting anything to eat, and makes her wry, one-sided mouth. Is this grimace a communication to him, a little lament, inviting him to conspire with her against Nelson? Judy's shiny green eyes turn up toward her grandfather, as if she expects him to make an unsympathetic response. Instead, he tells her, "Don't you worry, Judy. People can get served here until 9, and then at Club 19 downstairs they have sandwiches until midnight. And you saw Route 41. There's tons of eating places in Florida for your poor hungry daddy." The girl's lower lip trembles, and she gets out, "He might not have any money." "Why wouldn't he have any money?" The girl explains, "A lot of times he doesn't have any money. Bills come, and even men keep coming to the house, and Mommy can't pay them." Her eyes shift over to her mother's face as she realizes she has said too much. Prue looks away, wiping a crumb of potato from the corner of Roy's lips. "Things have been a bit tight," she admits almost inaudibly. "Harry wants to pursue it." "Really? That can't be. He's making $50,000 a year with the benefits and bonuses. My father used to support us all on less than $2,200. "Harry," Janice breaks in a voice that sounds like her mother's toward the end, when the old widow got into the habit of laying down the law, "people now need more things than your father did. That was a simpler world. I remember it. I was there, too. What did we used to do for fun when you took me out for a date? Go to the movies for 75 cents apiece, or maybe the miniature golf course out on 422 for even less. and then a soda at the Pen Supreme, and that was considered a very adequate good time. More than adequate, he remembers, if in the car, after all that kissing and bare tit it took to warm her up, Janice let him into herself, her inside warm and wet and softly grainy like a silk slipper. If she was having her period or feeling virtuous, she might hold him in her hand while he supplied the motion and the cum, white as lobster meat. A shocking white, really, and tough to mop up. What he loved best in the car with Janice was when she'd sit on him, her ass in his hands and her tits in his face, and tidily take his cum away with her. Her mind on a track far distant from his, she is going on. Nelson has to have good suits to make a good presentation of himself at the lot, and children now aren't just content with blocks and a ball. They have to have these video games. Jesus, 50,000 buys a lot of video games. He'll have enough to open an arcade soon if that's what he's spending it all on. Well, you joke, but that big barn of Mother's, it's no end of expense. Isn't that the case, Prue? Hauled back from a politely smiling daze, Prue grins and admits, it's eating up the dollars. They are hiding something from him, Harry sees. The unseen man portentously intones, 56, 5, 6. And a quavery old voice, so frantic it nearly chokes itself, croaks, Bingo! F-111, Joe Gold had said. Harry says, well, I don't know what the hell's going on. No one contradicts him. Roy is falling asleep with a sliver of shrimp shell on his slack lower lip. Harry has a sudden hankering for pecan pie. He tries to tease Judy into having dessert to keep him company. Key lime pie, he croons to her. You can only get it in Florida, the chance of a lifetime. What makes it so special? He isn't quite sure. He lies. Tiny, delicate limes that only grow on the Florida Keys. Anywhere else is too coarse for them, too cold and mean. She consents, but then only picks nibbles off the crust at the back. So he, having sold it to her, has to eat it for her, on top of his pecan pie, topped with a big oozing dip of butter pecan ice cream. Nelson's absence grows bigger as their meal wears on. Janice and Prue have decaf coffee and, preoccupied, dying to talk to each other, watch Harry finish Judy's dessert. In a way, gluttony is an athletic feat, a stretching exercise. Makes your tummy say howdy. The waitress in her pleats of gold finally comes with the check, and as he signs it with their condo number, he feels like a god casually dispatching thunderbolts. The sum will appear on his monthly statement next year, when the world has moved greatly on. How full he feels, stepping into the night air. A float of a man in a parade of dependents. Harry carries Roy, who fell asleep during dessert. Janice and Prue hold Judy, one by each hand, and, because she has been good during the boring, long meal, allow her to swing herself between them, giggling as they grunt with the strain. Between buildings A and B, several of the overhead sodium lights on their tall burnished wands of aluminum have been mysteriously smashed. They're out there, the criminals, watching and waiting for the security guards to nod, so the fortress of sleeping retirees can be stormed. In this gap of unillumination, the stars leap down at them out of the black, warm sky. At night, Florida recovers something of its old subtropical self before men tamed its teeming flatness. Being here is exciting, like being on the deck of a ship. The air tastes of salt, of rotting palm thatch, of swamp. The stars are moister here, more plummy.